Hello everyone, Comrade Snake here. Operation Theseus, it is happening. I am so excited. It has been a while. It's just busy with life. But back into it, back doing some board games, ready to film some videos, and I'm so excited about this one. I've been wanting to play it for a while now. It's time to get into it. So I have set up Scenario 1, which is basically a training scenario to kind of show how the flow of the game works, get used to the combat system, things like that. There's a few things that aren't going to be in it, and I'll kind of talk about that, but I'm going to use this video as an overview of kind of the rule system a bit, and then we're going to play through this first scenario because it plays very quickly, especially once you get the hang of it. But I want to do kind of a slow walkthrough, explaining what's going on, how the game works, and some thought processes about how I think these things are going to integrate in the larger scenarios, and partially about how I would play in a 2-2. And I have all the various player aids kind of all around. I'll pull them out as needed, but they're just kind of around the board right now. I want to focus on them because this is so small, just so you see the units, see what's going on. There's also a little thing on this side to help the Axis kind of keep track of their stuff, but I'm going to be using this board here so that way everything can be in camera. And I can go, excuse me, and here's a little AP counter. Now, normally there is a box on either side for the air units to go, and where they have their flown side, which there's also a flown box, but I'm just going to set it over here for the ease of demonstration for the video. Now, Operation Theseus, another game, I believe the first game in the series, which doesn't have an official title as far as I'm aware, is called Crossing the Line, about the Battle of Aachen in Germany in World War II. So this uses a very similar system. I think there's some tweaks, at least that's what I gathered from the designer notes in the rule book. Now, I have not played Crossing the Line. I believe there's a second edition coming out on VUCA Simulations at some point, which I will probably be getting, most likely, because having played this first scenario bit, I think the system itself is already pretty interesting, and I like it, and I'm very curious to see how it's going to work on the macro scale, because I have not done any of the larger scenarios yet. But the point being that already I like it. I also just love the VUCA components. I think they're gorgeous, and I love looking at them, and there is so much good quality of life improvements in the rulebook and all of the various components, just things on the board, like all the your Axis stacking limits, and on the allied side it gives you that on over. There's a similar one on the other corner. Trying to tilt that properly. There you go. And there's lots of little tiny things like that just make playing the game so easy to just find what you want. There's so much information on all the player aids and everything. It's just great. Anyway, enough gushing about that for now. Let's get into the meat of the kind of broad rules. There's going to be victory point stuff in the larger game about taking certain hexes and all that I will cover when I get to that video. I'm just going to be kind of talking about the core system with a few things that are not going to be gone over in this one. Well, I'll go over it, but they're not going to be demonstrated because they don't really come up in this scenario, because there's really only one player and one formation ever activating. Anyway, so the core of the game is formation activation. So we have all the various formations, the number of activations they have for the turn, and they roll for action points based on your activation level. So that's kind of what formation you're at. Your roll will determine how many points you get to use for that activation. So in this case, the Arietti, I'm going to say it wrong, I'm sorry, Arietti division has 6 activations for this scenario, and I believe it starts for that way with 6 activations in the first turn of the game, etc. But 6 activations. So the first thing we're going to do is roll a die to determine the number of action points it'll get for this activation. So we're going to do that now, just for the sake of demonstrating, and I'll kind of get into the rest here. So they roll a 1, not a great roll. Not an auspicious start. So 6, a roll of 1, gets us 1 die, or excuse me, 1 action point. The red would matter if they were in their reaction, as it says, the reaction activation. So reaction is something that we're not going to get in this scenario. But basically in certain conditions, enemy units moving in or out of near kind of zones of control can trigger reaction activation where you get less activation points than you would at a regular one, but it allows you to do things kind of ahead of your opponent, to do things within their operational loop. So you can kind of, counterattack before their attack really starts, or move out of the way when their attack's coming, and there's all kind of things you can do to maneuver in that. So for this first activation, they only get 1 action point. Extremely bad start for them for here. When I played this by myself off camera the first time, I ended up getting a better than historical outcome with the Italians. They managed to force the Free French off of Bir Hashim and take it over, which was an automatic victory, and they did a lot of damage too. They would have had a better than historical victory even if they had not taken the town that turn. Anyway, so we now have activations. So what do we use these activation points for? Well, we can spend them on these actions here, depending on conditions. So activating a stack of units costs 1. Now I say a stack, not individual unit. You're not using an action point per, say, movement point or anything like that. We use it on a whole stack. And there's no, unlike a lot of games, there's none of that leaving units behind, picking units up, none of that. What activates, and that's it. If you want to activate a unit and just move 1 out of a stack, that's going to cost a whole point to do that. You can't, there's no picking, choosing type deal. Okay. While we're on that subject, we might as well go over, well, let's get an actual unit out as an example. I didn't quite fully plan how to structure this, so let's just take a quick look at a couple things here. This is going to end up dropping to 5, but that's fine. So we have all of our various points here. So let's take a look at these units. We'll grab a couple examples. I know where those go. Grab that. We'll also grab a headquarters. Okay. So a unit, as we can see here. So we have its unit designation, what it belongs to, and then we have this number, this black bordered white number here is its efficiency rating. So that's going to matter for certain things where it has to take an efficiency check to see if it passes or fails and what that can do. Down here we have its strength. So this is 9. So when it takes damage, it'll drop, and we have different chits that we can put underneath. So it has 9. So if it takes damage, we'll drop it to, say, take 1 damage, we'll drop it to 8, stick 1 under, etc. This over here, I'm going to cover this number first, the 6. So this is its movement. These are movement range for units. And the red indicates that it is motorized. If it was all white, I believe, it's all white, is leg. And third color, I think, is the blue, which is for not command range. Command range is the other one. What is it on the? I'm trying to think what it's called. No, that is move. Never mind. Blue is still move. It just means that it's a HQ unit. Never mind. I'm trying to remember what it was. But yeah, white is for leg units, so infantry. Red for motorized. Tanks are count as motorized. And then we have the middle number here, and we'll bring up this armor unit here. So when you have a white background, that is anti-tank points. The yellow background is just tank points. So when there is combat happening and you have tank points, you can allocate those against, you allocate one leading unit that has its tank points that goes towards the attack. Depending on the lead defending unit's anti-tank points, you may have an armor advantage, which will give you, or not even just their tank points, their tank points as well. You swap that way too. you may have a DRM bonus to your combat roll, depending on how that turns out. If they have more anti-tank points than you, then it negates any tank advantage, you know, that kind of thing. The defender can also have more tank points. So if the Commonwealth, if I was attacking with this guy here and they had a 3 tank unit and there was, assuming no other modifiers to the tank points, then they would have tank superiority, get a DRM bonus to them, or technically a DRM negative to the attacker would be more accurate. Okay, and then we have, I should point out there is one other thing. Tank units when attacking with other units can get a combined arms bonus, unless, can I get that symbol there? Is a heavy tank unit, which does not get the combined arms. I guess the idea is that they're too slow to the kind of high tempo combined arms effective, you know, attack. Oh, and of flip side is disrupted side. So this unit is now disrupted. This little white thing here means that it does not have a zone of control, like, and then of course the D means its movement is disrupted, which, you know, changes how much it can do. Okay, and then we have over here an HQ unit. Now HQ units by default do not have zones of control. They have their 6, which is a reaction rating. Well, in this case, it's a 6, but I should say the red number is a reaction rating. So that's about rolling to try to use a reaction thing like I was talking about. This little number here is the engineer number. And units that are within command range that are attempting to do actions that require like engineering, they get a bonus to that. And that basically, in this, for the purposes of this game and for this scenario, this division is going to be about entering and breaching minefields. So the black hex is the command range. This 6 is movement allowance. This 5, orange 5, is its support, attack support. So in an event of an attack, there's a certain, depending on how deep the attack goes, there can be some support that can be lent, either half or full, or, you know, I guess potentially none, depending if it's a hasty attack, that can come into play. But that'll make more sense when I get to the actual playing the scenario. And this is the emergency supply side. So if there was a situation when it goes out of supply the first time, when you check, which is every time it activates, you can go to the emergency supply side, where you can still kind of move like a regular, still activate like a regular turn one more time. If you don't get back into supply before that, your activation points drops, or rather after that, your activation points are gonna drop down to 0, and you're not gonna be able to go again. But you still get, a little bit of go. Okay. This little, by the way, this is not a roller skate, this is a recon unit, and then we have some armored car unit over here. Now we've kind of gone over what units actually look like, the different numbers. Let's kind of resume here. So movement, like I said, moves the whole stack. You use the lowest movement in the stack. So if I activated these 2 units, I'd use the 5, and then the movement, they can move their full movement allowance for that whole point. So they can go and then it becomes about hex terrain, where you're moving, etc. So, the certain terrains are going to cost more. These dots here with the border is a minefield. All minefields are Commonwealth controlled by default. So they can never switch to other hands. They never become Axis controlled minefields. They can be breached by the Axis, but they never become controlled. And that means that until they're breached, the Axis have to make a special roll to move into the minefield, and then breaching a minefield is a whole different action, which is going to come up here, breach minefield. So they have to make a movement into a minefield. Assuming they make it in, and they might not, then they can attempt to breach there to make it easier to move through. It also becomes important for communication and supply tracing. I'll get into that in a little bit more in the actual, when I show how to do that and explain it. Refit is to basically attempt to flip disrupted units back to their regular side. They make an effectiveness check. If they pass, they flip. If not, tough luck. Improved defense gives a little chit on the unit, and as long as it doesn't move, it gets to use the improved defense side of the combat multiplayer random chits, and we'll show those chits later. Kind of talk about that because it's going to come up because there are units defending in these box, pillbox / minefield hexes. They count as being in improved defense by default, so we'll see some of that. I'll explain kind of how that goes. Now we get up to this attack, regular attack, prepared attack. Now I'm going to kind of go into some more detail here in the actual explanation of the combat sequence when we get to it. But basically, to give a slight introduction here, before you don't just outright declare a regular or prepared attack. You always declare a hasty attack, which costs 1 AP. And the defender has a choice, if they meet the correct conditions, to retreat out of the hex. And if they do, fine, they leave. Attacker kind of rolls in, that's it. If they fail or they stand and fight, then the attacker can choose to pay more points to escalate the attack. And that's going to change how much support they get, if they can use, if they're the Axis anyway, use air units. There are also having friendly units adjacent exerting a zone of control into the square that's being attacked can also provide a bonus. Although the defender, same for the defender. So there's all kinds of things that can play into all that. I'll break that down more soon. Stacking limits. Generally speaking, the Axis can stack more stuff together than the Allies. And the Free French are a slight exception. You cannot have 2 infantry units stacked on as the Allies, but the Free French here are an exception. They're allowed to stack both their units together. And it's their only units anyway, but they can bring both of them together because they're technically half brigades. But that's the exception. Normally, you can have a infantry and an armor together, or a HQ and one of each, or an HQ and one. But you can't have, say, 2 infantry, 2 tanks, etc. They have to be more spread out. I think it's a kind of way to show their relatively worse kind of command and control / and a little bit of like a doctrinal difference with the Axis forces. Although the Italians, who are sort of worse, even worse than the British, not that the British are bad, and the Italians are not great at it, but they're not the worst. Their reputation's a little bit worse in popular imagination than it deserves. But the point being that they're just not as good as the Germans, but they still get the kind of advantage of being able to stack multiple things together, or I should say more things together. Here's a nice breakdown of the sequence of play, a little bit, kind of what goes on. Admin phase, we'll get into that more meat in a different scenario. We're not going to go into all that right now because it's not going to come up. We really are only concerned about not even the initiative. We're just concerned about formation activation, which is the meat anyway. And we'll get into all these charts later. So let's kind of just get into it and kind of go over, because we're going to have a few different things to do. This first activation is going to be fast because there's only 1 point. Oops, I'm sorry, I dropped the rule book. So let's just do that now. Let's just get that over with. We'll use that point, and what I think, normally what I would try to do, what I did when I did this before, I shouldn't say normally, but I had a lot more points. I had 5 points the first activation, so I kind of grouped some units together and we made an immediate attack. Since we only have the 1, what I think we're going to try to do instead is see if we can move these units into this minefield. Because if we can get in there and possibly breach it later, that's worth a victory point, and we want to try to we can't guarantee that we'll be able to push the French out, so we want to try to maximize our victory points. And breaching minefields is one way in this scenario that the Italians get victory points. So let's try that. Now we have to roll separately for each unit. So how does this work? Well, when entering an enemy minefield, each unit's going to get a separate roll, and you're just rolling a regular 1d10, and there are different things that can subtract from the roll. You want to roll low, and the primary thing is going to be the core engineering rating if they're in command range. And actually, now that comes up, this is something I neglected to do since I kind of got a little bit off track. But before we move right in there, first thing you do is when a formation activates, you need to trace its supply, and then you need to trace its command. So let's do that. Now, in the case of the Arietta division, it's a little hard to see, but those little nubs down there, it is a motorized HQ. So that's good for us here in this case because we have a little more wiggle room for tracing supply. Now, a standard just leg HQ needs to be on or adjacent to a road that leads to a supply source in order to stay supplied. With a motorized, you need to be able to trace a line of hexes up to the command range to a road that leads to a major supply point or to the supply point itself. Now, in our case, in the Arietta's case, the supply point is over here. This is a major access supply, and in the small board, partitioned board we're using, it's the only one that matters. So can they get there? Well, yes, because if you go 1, 2, 3, we're on the road and to the supply. Now, why did I go this way and not this way? Well, this road has a couple things. There's a couple problems here. One, it should be fairly obvious, is that there are enemy units here. We cannot trace our supply through enemy units or through an enemy zone of control that's uncontested by our own units there. We don't have any units here, so these two hexes are off limits for tracing supply. Now, let's just for the sake of argument, say these guys were not there at all. Okay, well, we still have another problem. These are unbreached minefields, so we cannot trace supply through unbreached minefields. Okay, so this whole area is pretty much off limits for tracing supply, which right now in this small scenario doesn't matter. In the larger game, this will matter because we're going to need to be pressing all across the board, and we can't have this kind of bottleneck just sitting there. It restricts what we can do, where we can go and what we can do. Okay, now we trace command. Now we trace command by the hexes, and it works very similar to supply, except when it comes to tracing command, we don't care about terrain, for one. We just do number of hexes, and we can trace into enemy minefields, but not through them. So if we had a unit in here already, we can trace command to them because we can go 1 and into it 2. Or it's more accurate to say it goes out to them. So these guys are trying to trace command to the HQ. They can go 1, 2, they're there. They're fine. You don't count the hex they're in necessarily. Now, if they were over here, we could still do it like that. But we can, in fact, go 1, 2, and that's it. We can't go any farther than that. So this doesn't count. I think I explained that right, or maybe not. Maybe I didn't explain that clearly. I guess now I'm doubting myself. Put it this way, you cannot trace through the hexes. I guess it'd be better to say it like this. You cannot get a line of command through this hex. You can get into this hex. They would be in command here, but past this point, they're no longer in command through this area. They might theoretically, no, they can't really get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, they actually would still be in command because we can go around, but let's just ignore that. Ignore that. Point is, you cannot go through the minefield hexes. Okay, I'm sorry if I inadequately explained that or made it confusing or contradictory, but the point is you cannot get through them, and that's all that you need to imagine. You can't send, messages through a minefield easily. Okay. And then a slight thing on supply and command. So units are never out of supply. HQs are out of supply. units can be out of command. So they can be isolated from command. They can be out of command, which means they're just too far away. So, you know, it's out of command, he's too far away. There are restrictions what they can do. Isolated would be if he's, say, totally surrounded by enemy units, which I don't have enough out right now, but, you know, they're completely surrounded, then they're now isolated, which has its own problems. Okay. All right. Now, onto this, we're gonna, let's go to that. We're spent that movement point. We're gonna try to move into the minefield hex here. Okay. So the engineer gives the engineer rating of 3, means we have a -3 to the roll for these units. We don't have anything else that can lower that. The primary one, other than that for the Axis, is the Hecker unit, which we don't have in this scenario. It's like a German engineering unit. So we're just going to get -3, and we're going to go forward. Okay. So let's roll first for, we'll roll for them first. Let's see what we got. We roll a 4. This is good. We roll a 4. -3 makes it a 1. Oh, I should say there are potential other things that can, oh, no, sorry, that's breach. Never mind, I was looking at the breach thing for a second. Okay, so there are also different success chances, etc., for what type of unit. So in this case, though, we have a motorized unit. So we roll a 4, which would have actually succeed by itself, but -3 makes it a 1, so it definitely succeeds. I mean, it's going to succeed. So that's going to be able to successfully move in. Next up, we have the tank at a -3. Ooh, this is a bad roll, though. We got an 8. So this is an armor unit, the worst kind to get through. We have an 8, -3, 1, 2, 3. So that's a 5. So it fails and is disrupted in the attempt. Okay. So not a great start there. But hey, we're making progress. Now, unfortunately for the Italians, that was their only action for that activation. So they're gonna roll again. Now they're gonna be at a 5. And they roll a 9. That's very good. Okay. I guess just to be clear on here, 0 is a 10 in this game, not a 0. So they roll a 9, and that's gonna be on a 5. So that's 6 points. So they're gonna get 6 activation points. This is wonderful for them. All right, that gives us a lot of options here. So I think the first thing that we should do, since we're already in here, is attempt to breach the minefield. Now, because this is a minefield and a fortified box hex, you have to get a very good roll in order to actually breach. But that's going to cost 2. It's a little risky, but we're going to try it. So let's see. We're going to get a -3 because of the engineering roll. Excuse me. We're actually only going to get a -2 because we have a -3 from the engineering, but we're in an enemy zone of control, so it's a +1. So it's just a -2. So we needed 3 or less. And we get it. We actually got it. So that minefield is breached. I'm going to put it down here. So we have breached the minefield. That is very good. And it was worth the risk. Now, how do we want to do from here? We have 4 left to play with. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 for movement as a movement action. And we're going to move the 2 armor units here. We're going to move both of them over here. Since it's breached, we don't have to, roll again to move into that space. And it doesn't take all of our, I didn't clarify this before, but moving into a minefield hex takes all of your movement points. You have to basically you have to start next to it in order to even attempt to move into it. But now that it's breached, we don't have to do that. We can just move right on in, okay? Now we have 3 points left. And I think what we're gonna do is declare a hasty attack against Bir Hashim, which is 1 point. Now, let's take a look at the combat sequence. So we have attack declaration, hasty attack by default. Now, retreat before combat. It says not for unassigned dependent units. So there are some units that are independent that can be kind of temporarily attached to various commands over the course of a turn. They're not allowed to do this. Oh, excuse me, bumped the thing a little. Not allowed to do this. Anyway, so the defender opts to make a die roll if they wish to try to do so. Now, in this scenario, there's no other player and there is no activation or anything at all for the Free French. They basically just stand there the whole time, and whatever happens to them happens. That's really it. They don't get to do anything. So there's not going to be any roll for this. So we're just going to kind of skip this for this scenario. There's never going to be retreat before combat. Now, the attacker may choose to escalate. We will do that. We are going to spend both of our remaining points to do a full-on prepared attack. Oh, I should knock this down to 4 since we just used that activation. Anyway, full-on prepared attack. Now we're going to draw combat chips to determine combat multiplier. Now before I do this, I'm going to make this understandable because I want to break this down. So what I'm going to do is grab over the attacker and defender hex chips. Defender, we'll leave the breached minefield over there. And then attacker. Okay. We'll spread these out. Now the HQ is not actually participating as in any kind of combat sense, so I'm just going to temporarily put it up here for a second. So this is really what we have. Now we have these units here. Okay. Now we're going to draw some combat chips. Now I will put these in a cup later. Right now I just kind of have a pile and I'm just like not looking at as I draw two. So first I'll draw for the attacker. Oh, I'm sorry. And then next I will draw for the defender. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at one of these chips for the attacker. So what we have is a double-sided counter that has efficiency ratings from 2 to 7. So what we want to do is match the efficiency rating with each unit. Now in this case, they're the same for both stacks in the sense that all the units, the Free French and all the units, the Italians are the same. So we're not going to have to check different levels for each individual unit or anything like that. So the Italians are all 5. So now we have hasty, since they're attacker, hasty attack, regular attack, prepared attack. So statistically, prepared attack has better numbers than regular has better than hasty. But it's not always true. Sometimes you'll end up where a prepared attack will actually have worse values than regular or hasty on the chip, and that's to add kind of an element of randomness to it. So generally speaking, doing a prepared attack is better, but because of all of the funky, weird elements of war, things might, even in a prepared attack, things might not go well. You might have a bad commander, you might have bad weather, or you might have all kinds of different things that can change how the unit performs in combat. Even a good unit, an elite unit, a well-trained unit, things can happen, snafus, as they say, that can diminish its effectiveness. But in this particular instance, we basically got the best possible. We've got 3 multiplier. So the combat strength, the strength there, of all these units are going to be multiplied by 3. In the case of the French units, which have efficiencies of 7, they're extremely good, extremely efficient units. We're going to look back over here. Now, because they're on the defense, what we have is, I believe the red is for disrupted units, but I'll double check that again. I can't remember exactly that's disrupted. But regular defense, which is most of the time, most likely, and then improved defense is the green. Now, because they are in a box minefield hex, they automatically have improved defense, and they're 7, so they're going to get a double modifier to all their strength. See, it's even less than the 6. So that's like one of those weird random things. And the 5 efficiency actually, and a regular attack is the best one on this particular chit here. 4 out of 20 moves. 4 out of 29, it says. So that's interesting there. But we're going to get double all of our points. Now, because these are some very thick units, that might be enough. We'll see here. Okay, so that's going to end up being 12 plus 16, so 28. So we have 28 points on the defender. And over on the attacker, though, we have 3, so 27, 27 plus 9, or yeah, 9 and 9. So 18 plus 27, that's going to be 45. Right, yeah, 45. Ooh, 45 to, shoot, I already forgot what I did every year. So it's a bit late while I'm recording this. What was it again? 12 and 28? 45 to 28. It's not even quite a 2 to 1. Oof, not, so even with all that nice bonus, not the best odds for this, but we at least potentially get a 1 to 1 here. Now, all the other factors that come into play, though. So now that we've done that, okay, we can check for combined arms bonus. Now that would give a bonus to the attack. However, because these are heavy tanks, we know we're not going to get combined armor, so we can ignore that. Temporary battle strength out of supply units have 50% strength. We don't need to worry about that. The combined bonus might matter, but we already did that, so it's 1 to 1. Now we have Axis ground support mission column shifts. So we are going to use that air unit. We're really only going to get it this once. So as you can see there, it's a 1 column shift. Come on, 1 column shift. So we will use that for this turn. 1 column, fly at 1 column shift. So we're going to be 1 better than the 1 to 1 now. Determine, now we do DRM determination. So attacker, defender, combat support. So this would be, is there any units that are exerting a zone of control in the defending unit, both the defending and attacker? Now, obviously, the HQ unit is technically in there, but they don't take hits or anything like that. Anyway, so the answer is no to both. So there's not going to be any DRM bonuses from that. Now we do attack HQ support. Now, because we used a prepared attack, we can use the full 5 of these HQ support value. Think of support value as all of the other things that go into that artillery and recon and blah blah blah, except everything that would go into organizing the attack elements that aren't the main force per se. Intelligence work, all that jazz. So we have 5. So we're going to add up. We have a +5 to our DRM to there. Now we do armor superiority check. Now we have to assign one of these armor units as the lead unit, which also means that it could potentially take, if we take hits in this combat, it'll take the first hit by default. It has to take 1 hit. We'll just do this guy because it doesn't really matter. So this guy here will be our lead attack unit. Now he has a defense of 2, and then we will, I should say tank points of 2, not defense, excuse me. 2 tank points. Now, because they're attacking into a box hex, enemy box hex, that will have their tank points. So he really only has a tank point of 1 value. And on top of that, we'll say this will be the lead because it has a higher strength. This is the lead unit for the defense. So it has 1 anti-tank point, and 1 tank point cancels it out, so there is no tank superiority bonus. So that's the only thing we have so far is the +5 from the attack HQ. Schwerpunkt, which is a chit that the Axis player can assign at the beginning of turns, is not used in this scenario, so there's no Schwerpunkt bonus. There was no failed retreat before combat, which is worth a +2, so we don't worry about that. Now the attacker rolls the DRM and the 5, and the attacker rolls a 1d10, and the DRMs are applied. So we're going to add a +5 to this roll. So let's just roll it right here. We roll a 5, which is going to make it a 10. So now we see what the results of that are, if we can go into that. So we're going to use this little guy here to help navigate. So we are going to be looking at the Minefield box hex. Okay, so we are looking for 1 to 1 first. 1 to 1 on the Minefield box, so that would be here. Now we have the column shift because of the aircraft. So we're attacking at the 3-2 box on the minefield. And we are total of 5, or excuse me, total of 10. So it was a 5 plus 5. So that would have been a very bad result if we had no DRMs. 2-1 with an efficiency check. Okay, so we just have a 2 and 2. So each side taking 2 step losses. Now the red underline means that any units in there have to take an efficiency check. So for the left side here, it's the attackers, and the right side is defenders. So it would be if say we're all to 4 with no DRM, or a DRM modifier to 4, the attackers would take 3 hits and have to take efficiency checks, which can disrupt their units on everything. But in this case, we have a 10, which is 2 and 2. So there's a few things we can go do. So first of all, now the defender applies all hits first and does all that. So they take 2 hits. They have to take 1 hit on the lead defending unit. So they will drop down to 7 strength points. Now there's a few options for this second point here, because we don't have to worry about efficiency checks or anything like that. Now the defender can opt to retreat their units to negate a point. However, because in this scenario, evacuating Bir Hasham is basically an automatic Axis or Italian Axis victory, the French are basically going to opt to stay in as long as possible no matter what. We're not concerned about long-term consequences. So in this case, we will just take the second hit and we'll take it on this unit here. So that'll drop them down to 5 strength points. And we don't have to worry about efficiency or anything. So we are going to put them back on. So they took 2. Okay. And the defending will remove that. Now there is going to be 2 hits applied to the attackers here. Now, same thing, this guy here, he was the lead unit, the lead tank unit, he has to take 1 hit. So he is going to drop down to 3 strength points. Or excuse me, 2 strength points. Drop from 3 down to 2. I'm going to remove these combat holes. Okay. Now we have a second hit. Now we could actually opt to do a retreat from combat in the same way, kind of the same way as a defender, similar, I shouldn't say the same, but a similar way to the defender can, and that will allow us to negate 1 hit. And I'm going to say that's probably the best way to do things right now, but let me just double check about that real quick, because I want to make sure that I do it correctly. Yes, distribute. Okay. Voluntary retreat if attacking, convert the first remaining hit only. And I guess that should be specified. Basically, you can only absorb 1 hit that way. So if I had taken 3 hits as the attacker, I could retreat and absorb 1 extra hit, but that 3rd hit would still go through. Anyway, into a voluntary retreat, all of the other units must be taken as step losses. Okay, so we are allowed to take the voluntary retreat away to avoid the step loss, which I think we'll do because it's preferable to keep our forces. We don't have to worry about enemy attack or anything because we're all, they're not moving or anything. So we have to retreat towards the nearest supply source. So we will retreat this way towards them because it doesn't particularly matter, to be honest. All right, we'll move the attacker hex. So now we would check to see battle victory, which is that the side that inflicts more step losses, gets the battle victory, which would give them 1 AP that they can use. So if the Italians had, say, only lost 1 and 1 strength point after that attack, they would have actually gotten a battle victory because there was 2 losses to the French, which would give them another AP they could use for you know, whatever things they wanted from that point on. And that's kind of an interesting thing on tempo-wise, is there's no, like a lot of games where if you force the enemy to retreat, you just get the automatic advance after combat. And you don't actually get that here. But what you can get is that battle victory bump of AP, which would allow you to move into that hex and possibly more, or move past even. You can basically get a breakthrough and kind of exploit that and, you know, potentially do things. You know, there are all sorts of interesting possibilities that can happen from what I can tell, which is quite cool. But in this particular case, it was a draw, so there was no battle victory. Nobody is, or actually, take that back, because they did only lose one. So I believe they actually did still get the battle victory. Let me double check that, because I actually can't. Does it count? The side that receives the lower combat hit number in combat battle wins. I guess the one thing I'm not sure, does that mean that they, on the roll, they had the lower, or that after everything is done, they get the thing? I think it's supposed to be that after all like losses and everything are calculated, not necessarily the roll. So actually that would be an Italian battle victory, and they would get that AP. So that is good, and we can spend that, and I think we will, in order to move back into, I think, into an attacking position here. We can get ready for another assault. I think that is a decent thing to do. Okay, now move on to the next activation. This is fairly easy and straightforward because there's only one activation ever to do, and I'm doing anything else. So we're going to roll for the Arietta here on their 4th activation, and they roll a 1. 1 on 4 is 1. So they get 1 point. Not much to do there. I think we'll spend it for a refit action, and we'll try to bring them back up. So what we need to do is roll equal to or less than their efficiency rating, which is 3. So not great. We failed. So they're still disrupted. All right, that activation is done. So now we're going to roll on the roll on this activation on the 3rd, and we roll a 9. 1s and 9s. That's all we're going to get. So level 3, a roll of a 9 is 6. So we now get 6 points again. Okay. So I think the first thing we'll do is spend a point to declare a hasty attack on Bir Hashim. And this is something that I do think is kind of interesting about this, is that you can sort of potentially bluff opponents, like if you're playing a 1v1. You can declare an attack and maybe try to bluff them into retreating, and then go from there and just continue to advance. And instead of, you know, trying to do that, or if, you know, the other thing you have to think about is, you know, maybe it's not a bluff per se, but you don't necessarily want to spend all that AP and maybe blow an area unit or anything to dislodge them from a hex, but you do it, you know, maybe they lose their nerve and retreat back, and saves you that. You can save it for later. Or if you're the defender, do you want to stick it out and make them use more AP and potentially risk damaging your forces more rather than retreat? Or do you like you got to kind of think about a lot about how to deal with an enemy attack declaration, more than a lot of other games where you just get to a combat phase and then it just happens and there's nothing you can do about it. But here you have to actually kind of think about how you want to deal with it. If you just want to take it, try to make them use more AP points, you want to retreat. There's kind of, it's interesting. There's a mind game there that I appreciate, even if it's a somewhat small one. But anyway, declaring a hasty retreat is obviously not a hasty retreat, hasty attack. No retreat before combat. We're just going to go straight up to a full prepared attack because it makes the most sense to do that for now. We're going to draw 2 combat chits. First for attacker, and then again for defender. We will do this before. I'm not going to put the chips out we know where they are. 7 and a 5. And we got these guys again. Okay, so let's see. How did they do this round? Okay, once again, the Italians are getting a 3 multiplier. And once again, a 2 multiplier for the defender. So different chits, but the same results there, although they are still different. But yeah, so we're going to get, this is going to be a lead tank unit again. Now there's no combined arms, no out of supply formations. There's not any more ground support attack craft or attack aircraft. DRM determination and all this. Okay. So now we have a once again 27 plus 9, so 36 plus 6. That's going to be 42. 42 versus, let's see, 14, 10, 24, 42. So once again, not quite 2 to 1. We're at I think that's about 3 to 2. It's close enough that I'm going to say 3 to 2. I'm not going to do the math right now. This is just a demonstration. Let's say it's a 3 to 2 again here for the purposes of going. I guess it would be if you divided both in half, you know, the 26, 13, and the 42 is a 21, 7, 7, 7. I mean, it's pretty close. I'm going to say it's a 3 to 2. It's close enough. So here we go. I guess that is, because it'd be 14 and then 21. So, well, 13 in that case, but it's 3 to 2. I'm right. 3 to 2. Once again, all of the armor bonus is all canceled out, etc. We just have the +5 from the attack support. So we have a +5. We roll a 7 +5, so 12. So even a better result this time. Sort of. We got a 1 and a 2. But the 1 is an efficiency check. So, well, we do defender first. So they're going to take 2 hits, and it's going to go exactly like the other one. So they're going to take, this guy's going to drop down to 6. And this guy's going to drop down to 4. And they're going to go over here. And they're going to be back there. Now this is going to get a little bit different here. So we have 1 hit we have to take, and that has to be them because they're the lead unit. So they have to take that. Now we have to do efficiency checks on each unit. So first for the lead unit, they fail, so they are disrupted. The second tank unit, they pass. And then now the thick infantry unit, the most important one, fails, so they are now disrupted. Okay, so we have 1 healthy tank unit that is undisrupted, 1 disrupted infantry, and then the very damaged and disrupted tank unit there too. Okay, now that leaves us, that's the end of all that combat. That leaves us with 3 AP. Now we cannot try to attack again because we have way too many other issues, so we need to start doing some refits and try to get ourselves ready to fight again. So first, let's try to refit the infantry. So that's going to be 1 AP. Fail. Let's try again. Fail. That's a 10. Spend that last point to try to do it again. We really want to push him. No. Oof. This is not good. Okay, now we got to activate on a 2 this time, because we activated on 3 last time. So it was, yeah. 1, 9, 1, 9. Here we go. So let's see. Got a 6 on the 2. It's going to be 3 points. Sorry. 3 points. 3 points. Oof. Okay. Let's try that refit again. We really need to get these guys up. I rolled a 7. Not good enough. Try it again. Nothing. Okay, come on. everything. Nothing is working. We're just floundering. We're on the last activation here. Come on. Roll a 9. All right. Oops, it's the wrong chart. Roll a 9. We got 6 again. Okay. We got a chance. We got a chance to salvage this. Okay. Seven. Oh no, we're gonna be out here. Oh, okay, we got it. All right, we got it. We got them up. And we're gonna spend this last point to, we just need to move them out of the way because they're disrupted. We're gonna get them out of here. And now we have 3 points left. This is the last really thing we can really do. Actually, shoot, we would have had a battle victory. I forgot, we would have had a battle victory from that one. We would have gotten an AP point. We would have had one more refit we could have done. Let's just assume we have one more refit, and I wanted to, we basically have one extra AP, because I forgot to do that. Does it really benefit us much? Probably not, but just for the sake of argument, let's try to refit this guy. Failed anyway. Okay, didn't matter. Okay, so we're going to declare an attack with these 2 units over here into Bir Hashim, and then we're going to make it a prepared attack. All right, we get rid of these chits. You guys at this point, you know the gist. Hope you've been following along. Lead unit. Let's go. Okay. Attacker. Defender. Okay, what do we got here? Ooh, okay, so both getting 2 multiplying by 2. Not good for the Italians. Well, not horrible, but let's see what we got. So we have a 6 and an 18. So 24, okay, 24 against a 12 plus 8, a 20. So 24 against 20, that's a 1-to-1, pretty much. 1-to-1, okay. We're gonna add 5 to the, I'm not gonna go through the whole thing again. We already know how it all goes. At this point, we really just gonna get that +5. That's all we're gonna get. And we're gonna roll. I'm gonna move this board out of the way. And we roll an 8 +5, the best attack so far. Italians are getting better and better. We got a 13 on the 1-to-1 with the minefield box. So 1-to-1 on the minefield box, and we got a 13. But the 13 is actually the same as before, a 1 and 2. So we are going to take 1 hit here, brings that down to 2. And the Free French are going to take hits on everything. But they will remain in the hex. And the Italians will now take their efficiency checks. Fails. And fails. So both their units are disrupted. Okay. And that is the end of this scenario. So that was a nice, quick run that you all got to experience. Well, they do technically get 1 more AP point for battle victory. Let's just try to refit that infantry. And we do get it. Okay. So, well, let's put him on top just to make it look nice. Okay, so they refit. That's great. Okay. So no automatic victory. I'm sorry, I hit it again. No automatic victory because the Italians did not take Bir Hashim. But let's go check the victory points because I think we did pretty good. Let's go to scenario 1 and look at how we did. Okay, scenario 1, the assault on Bir Hashim. Victory conditions: the Arditi division gets an automatic victory by clearing the Free French from Bir Hashim.
and entering the hex with one of its units. Should this not occur, the overall performance is determined as follows. 1 victory point for each minefield hex breached, 1 victory point for each free French strength point lost, 1 victory point for each disrupted free French unit. So this will be pretty easy. There's no disrupted free French units, so no victory points there. 1 minefield is breached, so that's 1 victory point. And then the number of free strength point losses, well, the first demi brigade lost 3, and the second lost 3. So that's a total of 6. So that's 7 victory points total, which does equal a far better than historical outcome. So although the Italians were not able to breach Bir Hashim, they've at least bloodied the French in a better way than they did historically. That is a Italian victory of sorts. Now, I imagine in the grand scheme of this game, if this had been the full campaign game and this had happened, while that would be nice to damage the French a lot, you know, the Italians did blow through all their activations and ended up with a very weak armored unit on the verge of death, and another weakened and disrupted armor unit, 1 healthy infantry division, some recon units kind of scattered around. I mean, they did breach this minefield, which is good, but I mean, it seems like it wasn't a lot of progress for a turn, but I don't know yet. I'm going to get to that eventually. But that was a little walkthrough of the basics of Operation Theseus, as well as the first scenario, and I hope you, just every time, but I hope you enjoyed it as much watching it as much as I do playing it. I will be probably setting up for the campaign game. There is technically a shorter scenario, which is just like the first 3 turns, I think, of the campaign game, but I'll be honest, I don't quite see the point other than it's quicker. So I'm probably just gonna go straight to the full 8 turns campaign next, but I may play it at least a little bit, or maybe that first slightly elevated scenario off camera, so it might be a little bit before the next video. We'll see. I'll kind of think about it. Yeah, so there you go. I hope you enjoyed. Can't wait to play more of this game. It's wonderful. I'll put a link to VUCA Simulations in the the comments or below the video, so you should all check them out. If you like the look of this game, if you think the components look beautiful, because they are beautiful, highly recommend checking it out. Go read the rules for yourself, see what I may have gotten wrong, and consider picking it up maybe for Christmas or the holidays. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Catch you next time. Like and subscribe, which, it sounds so dirty saying that. I hate that, but I did anyway. Have a good night or morning, whatever time of day it is.